At Vermont Labs, we strive to give you, the consumer, the best watch review experience possible. To keep our reviewing skills sharp and brutally honest, we practice the deadly martial art of Krav Maga. I will refer to Long Island Watch as LIW. The owner of LIW, Mark, has a popular YouTube show about watches, which I subscribe to, and is how I learned about the Islander. The price of the Islander was $300 when I bought it. I took advantage of LIW's 5% discount by signing up for their newsletter, which brought the price down to $284. For some reason, Gmail put the invoice that LIW sent to me in my spam folder, so be aware of this. I chose the free shipping method. LIW sent the watch to me the next day via the US Post Office, and it took 2 days to get to my place in Vermont from Long Island. This was not my first purchase from LIW. I bought a Laco from LIW on eBay a few years ago and was given good customer service by Mark himself. The Islander comes in a small no-nonsense box, which I appreciate because it doesn't take up a lot of space, and its lightweight will cost me less to ship when I resell the watch. The only thing that bothered me about the box was that it lacked product branding. The box comes with a card that has links to the 1-year warranty, product support, and the manual. The Islander is based largely on the design of the Seiko SKX. I've never handled an SKX and have never had an ounce of desire to buy an SKX because I don't like non-hacking movements and I don't like mineral crystals. The cult of the SKX has always seemed baffling to me. With a few exceptions, I will not be making comparisons between the SKX and the Islander. It was love at first sight when I first saw the Islander in the box. The watch has that really nice striking contrast between black and white that makes it look more expensive than it actually is. Unlike the last 2 automatic watches that I reviewed, both of which were more expensive than the Islander, the bracelet of the Islander has screw pins. I try to remain objective at all times, but there's nothing to put me in an irritated mood like having to hammer in and out push pins before evaluating a watch. When a watch manufacturer gives you a watch with screw pins, it is saying, I respect you. I respect your time, I respect your watch, and don't want you to take a hammer to it. I used a 1.4mm screwdriver to size the Islander, which hopefully is the right size screwdriver. The dial has a beautiful inky black color, which makes the snowy white yet to be activated lume really stand out. I like reflective hands, which the Islander has, because they're easier to see in low light. I love the needle-thin reverse lollipop second hand in the daytime, but not so much at night because the reverse position of the lume lollipop is counterintuitive. I love the big minute hand with its somewhat hypodermic tip. I don't like the tip of the hand of the hour hand. Why does it end in a nub? I would give either the hour hand a more hypodermic, longer tip, or just get rid of the nub altogether. I'm glad LIW didn't copy the SKX's indexes, as the SKX's indexes seem very dated to me. LIW opted for a more traditional set of indexes. The 3 and 6 indexes seem a little too wide for my tastes. While the indexes are well lume and line up perfectly when seen up close, they seem a little tacky. They're not terribly thick, and the reflective edges are underwhelming. The day and date are really cramped in their cutout, which makes them difficult to read. They need more margin. I'm not too crazy about the logo. It's too similar to the Q&Q Smile Solar logo. In Mark's video introducing the Islander, he mentioned that the logo had lume. My logo doesn't glow, thank God. Mark is the face of Island Watch, sort of like Colonel Sanders, when he was alive, was the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'd like to see some form of rendering of Mark's face replace the logo, and I'm completely serious about this. The text on the bottom portion of the dial is small and discreet, and I appreciate this. Some people are already wigging about the lack of the text, quote, divers, unquote, on the watch. the absence of which indicates that the Islander is not ISO rated like the SKX. I don't think ISO ratings are that big a deal. If you need a dive watch for a backup to your dive computer, you can buy an ISO rated Citizen ProMaster for less than $150. Missing from the very bottom of the dial are the words I had hoped to see. Made in USA. Okay, I thought, the watch isn't made in the US, but surely it must be assembled in the US. I searched the LIW's webpage for the Islander, but saw nothing indicating where the watch was assembled. Had the Islander been assembled in the US, I would have felt better about the watch knowing that at least part of the production process had local oversight. While I have nitpicked the features of the dial, this is altogether a really handsome dial that I love. The watch has a flat air-coated sapphire crystal which sits below the bezel insert. The bezel insert is ceramic and shiny and beautiful and integrates perfectly with the dial. The 120-click bezel is comfortable to turn, yet grippy. The action is smooth as hell and absolutely amazing. The bezel lines up perfectly. This is a dream bezel for people like me who are super finicky about bezels. Consistent with a theme of lack of product branding that we see throughout this watch experience, the crown is unsigned. I really wanted this crown to be signed. The crown is grippy, has adequate pop, adequate action, and the stem has no wobble. There is, however, going to be an issue with the crown for people who, unlike me, like to wind their automatics. When the crown is pulled out to the first position for winding, you're going to get a little chafed against the crown guards when winding the watch. The Islander doesn't have much area on the top of its case. What you see of the case is mainly lug, which are brushed on the top. The remainder of the case is polished. The brushing is somewhat lackluster, but the polishing is beautifully done. I love the polished curvature of the sides of the case and wouldn't have it any other way, and I'm a person who never says good things about polishing on watches. As you can see, the Islander has drilled lugs, and they're positioned perfectly at the very edge of the lugs. As you can see, the end links articulate very nicely. The case width is difficult to measure. I say it's 44 millimeters, LIW says 43 millimeters. The lug to lug is extremely small at 45.5 millimeters. On paper, 44 millimeters in width is a pretty big watch for someone like me with a 7-inch wrist. The watch wears like a 42 millimeter, and the small exterior of the case and compact 4 o'clock crown makes the watch look like a 42 millimeter. I'm not at all excited about a 38 millimeter version of this watch because this watch feels really good on my wrist and I think it looks good as well. Size for my wrist, the Islander is 168 grams, which is a comfortable weight for me. The case is pretty flat because there's a little curvature to the lugs. The bulbous protruding case back causes a relatively sizable gap between the bottom of the lug edges and your wrist. I personally like watches like this with bulbous case backs and find them comfortable, but some people will prefer a flatter case back with rounder lug. You're seeing the watch under magnification, so you're going to see that the lume is not perfect. It's a little splotchy and uneven. The lume is, however, pretty incredible. I slept with the Islander last night. When I woke up 5.5 hours later, the lume was still going strong. The Islander absolutely owns my Citizen ProMaster in lume strength and duration. It also owned the Helm Curaburi that I once had. The Islander is simply a dominating lume machine. I normally don't think case backs are very important and don't pass judgment on them unless they're done very well, but the Islander's case back is done especially badly. If you didn't know the image on the case back was of Long Island, you'd think it was some type of amoeba, maybe from outer space, maybe the Adrenomus strain. I think it's somewhat absurd to put a big, long, jaggedy island in such a small area. I also don't like the polished area surrounding the island, as it will act as a scratch magnet. The back of the case is another good place to put Mark's face. We don't associate Long Island watch with Long Island. We associate it with the celebrity owner, Mark. As you can see, according to the time grapher, my Islander is running 19 seconds fast a day, which is pretty piss poor, but running well within specification for the NH36 movement. The links of the bracelet look and feel a lot like the bracelet that came with the imitation Seiko tuna I reviewed earlier this year for $220. The bracelet links are thin and only 3 millimeters, just like the imitation Seiko tunas. It wouldn't surprise me if both bracelets were made in the same factory. The bracelet of the imitation Seiko tuna, as I remember, was finished more nicely and integrated well with the case, unlike the Islander. We'll get to that in a moment. The Islander's bracelet links are super smooth and super flexible. The bracelet has fairly good taper. The bracelet width is 22 millimeters, tapering down to 17.5 millimeters, and is 22 millimeters at the clasp. The bracelet feels really good on the wrist. The bracelet integration is mediocre, but I'm not going to wig about this at $300. I do, however, expect a decent clasp at $300. LIW needs to sign this clasp. It seems pretty nervy to me that LIW put a crappy generic clasp into the watch that was probably sourced in Asia for about $1. A big issue with me with this clasp is that it only has 3 micro adjusts. I took 2 links out of the bracelet and maxed out the micro adjusts. The watch was slightly too tight for my wrists. This watch needs either some half links or at least 4 micro adjusts. The clasp's lever snaps in properly. Most reviewers are going to complain about this thin, flimsy-looking scissor, but I don't honestly think that having a real milled scissor is that important, at least not at this price point. The main issue with this clasp is that there is too much clearance between the clasp and the bracelet, and because the clasp is made out of thin metal, it is somewhat sharp and will accidentally scrape people. You can easily scrape yourself with this clasp as well. The Islander would be a spectacular value if it only had a half-decent clasp.